The first shovelful of dirt struck Adrian Ashford's face before he could scream. His wrists were bound tightly behind his back. Blood trickled from a cut above his left eye as he struggled against the ropes, every movement tightening their grip. Above him, 4 shadowy figures stood around the edge of the freshly dug grave, their faces hidden by the darkness. Another shovelful of dirt crashed onto his chest, then another. With every passing second, breathing became harder. The weight of the soil pressed against his body as panic surged through him. He kicked desperately, but there was nowhere to go. The narrow walls of the grave trapped him like a coffin before death had even arrived. This wasn't a kidnapping. It wasn't a warning. It was an execution. The men above him worked with chilling precision. There were no arguments, no hesitation, no mercy. They had planned every detail, from choosing this isolated forest to digging the grave long before they brought him there. Adrian forced himself to stay calm. Just 48 hours earlier, he had been sitting inside the executive boardroom of Ashford Global Holdings, preparing evidence that would expose the biggest financial conspiracy in the company's history. Millions of dollars had disappeared through fake contracts. Financial records had been altered. Entire divisions had been used to hide an empire of corruption. Adrian had uncovered everything. What he didn't know was that the people responsible had already signed his death warrant. As another wave of dirt poured into the grave, one horrifying truth became impossible to ignore. The people burying him alive weren't strangers. They were the very executives he had trusted. Unless a miracle happened within the next few minutes, Adrian Ashford would become another missing executive whose disappearance would never be solved. But sometimes, the people who dig the grave are the very ones who end up falling into it. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to see how many countries are joining us today. And if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Cognora, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story of betrayal, survival, and justice. Now, let's go back to where it all began, 48 hours earlier. 48 hours earlier, Adrian Ashford walked through the towering glass entrance of Ashford Global Holdings, completely unaware that every step was bringing him closer to the grave that had already been prepared for him. To the thousands of employees who filled the lobby every morning, Adrian was more than the chairman's only son. He was the future of the company. Unlike many heirs born into wealth, he refused every shortcut. Before earning a seat in the executive wing, he spent years working across different departments, learning the business from the ground up. He believed leadership had to be earned, not inherited. That was exactly why the employees respected him. He listened before making decisions. He remembered names. He visited departments without an entourage. He never asked anyone to do work he wasn't willing to do himself. But not everyone admired those qualities. Inside the executive boardroom, respect had long been replaced by fear. For years, several senior executives had quietly transformed Ashford Global Holdings into their personal source of wealth. Through shell companies, inflated contracts, and hidden offshore accounts, millions of dollars disappeared without attracting attention. Every audit was manipulated. Every suspicious transaction was buried beneath layers of paperwork. The scheme had survived because no one had looked closely enough. Until Adrian. What began as a routine review of the company's expansion projects uncovered a trail of numbers that refused to make sense. Payments had been approved for projects that didn't exist. Vendors had received millions without delivering a single service. Entire financial records had been altered after approval. The deeper Adrian investigated, the clearer the truth became. This wasn't simple corporate fraud. It was an organized conspiracy involving some of the most powerful people inside the company. Instead of confronting them immediately, Adrian made a careful decision. He copied every document, secured every financial record, and stored multiple encrypted backups in locations only he could access. He intended to present everything to his father, Richard Ashford, during the upcoming board meeting. He believed exposing the truth would save the company. He never imagined that someone inside the boardroom already knew what he had discovered. As Adrian left his office that evening carrying a black leather briefcase, unseen eyes followed his every movement through the building's security cameras. Elsewhere in the building, a quiet meeting was already underway. By the time the sun rose the following morning, the decision had been made. Adrian Ashford would never make it to that board meeting alive. While Adrian drove home, believing the evidence was finally complete, another meeting was taking place on the top floor of Ashford Global Holdings. Behind the closed doors of the executive boardroom, 5 of the company's most powerful executives gathered in silence. The atmosphere was tense. No one smiled. No one reached for the coffee that had grown cold on the polished conference table. Victoria Kane stood at the head of the room, her expression calm but calculating. Beside her sat Graham Pierce, reviewing financial reports that should never have existed. Marcus Holt remained near the window, watching the city skyline while waiting for a decision that would change everything. They all knew the same thing. Adrian had uncovered their secret. Years of carefully hidden fraud were on the verge of collapsing. Billions of dollars had been siphoned through fake vendors, inflated contracts, and offshore accounts. Every forged signature, every altered report, and every stolen dollar was now connected by the evidence Adrian had gathered. If he reached the board meeting, their careers would be over. Their fortunes would disappear. Their freedom would vanish. For several long moments, no one spoke. Then one sentence shattered the silence. There was only one way to stop Adrian Ashford. From that moment forward, the discussion was no longer about protecting the company. It became a plan to protect themselves. Every detail was carefully organized. His daily routine, his travel routes, the blind spots in the company's security system, the isolated location where no one would ever hear him call for help. Nothing was left to chance. As the meeting came to an end, each executive walked out with the same understanding. Within 48 hours, Adrian Ashford would disappear, and the world would believe it was nothing more than a tragic mystery. The following evening seemed like any other. Adrian Ashford left Ashford Global Holdings just after sunset, carrying the black leather briefcase that contained the evidence capable of bringing down some of the most powerful executives in the country. He had no idea that every movement was being tracked. For the past 2 days, Marcus Holt had assigned a surveillance team to monitor Adrian's routine. They knew where he parked, which route he preferred, where traffic slowed, and even the times he stopped to answer phone calls. Nothing had been left to chance. As Adrian's vehicle merged onto a quiet stretch of highway, another black SUV appeared several hundred feet behind him. A second vehicle moved ahead. Within minutes, he was boxed in. At first, Adrian assumed it was an aggressive driver. Then the vehicle in front slammed on its brakes. His tires screeched across the asphalt as he fought to avoid the collision. Before he could react, the SUV behind him rammed the rear of his car with crushing force. The impact threw him forward. His head struck the steering wheel. For a brief moment, everything went silent. When Adrian opened his eyes, the doors of his vehicle were already being pulled open. Several masked men surrounded him. He threw everything he had at them. He fought with everything he had. He broke free for only a few seconds before another attacker tackled him to the ground. The struggle was over almost as quickly as it had begun. A cloth soaked in a powerful sedative was pressed firmly over his nose and mouth. His vision blurred. The headlights above him dissolved into streaks of light. The voices around him became distant echoes. Then, complete darkness. Hours later, Adrian regained consciousness. His hands were tied behind his back. His ankles were bound. A rough sack covered his head. The vehicle beneath him bounced violently over an uneven dirt road, each jolt sending pain through his bruised body. He tried to listen. At least 4 voices. Heavy boots. The unmistakable smell of damp earth filled the air. Then the vehicle came to a stop. Someone grabbed him by the shoulders. Another seized his legs. Without a word, they dragged him across the ground. Leaves cracked beneath his body. Cold night air filled his lungs. When the sack was finally ripped away, Adrian looked up and saw a massive hole carved into the earth, a freshly dug grave. At that moment, he understood exactly why they had brought him there. This wasn't about intimidation anymore. This wasn't about ransom. The people behind this conspiracy had no intention of letting him leave alive. The first shovelful of dirt landed squarely on Adrian Ashford's chest. He gasped as loose soil slid across his face and into his mouth. Instinct took over. He twisted violently, trying to break free from the ropes binding his wrists. Every movement only buried him deeper as the walls of the grave crumbled inward. Another shovelful struck him, then another. The men above worked without speaking. To them, Adrian was no longer a man. He was a problem that had to disappear. The opening above grew smaller with every passing second. Adrian's breathing became shorter. His heart pounded so hard it echoed inside his ears. He fought to stay calm. Panic would only waste the little air he had left. He forced himself to take slow, controlled breaths, ignoring the crushing weight pressing against his body. Then he heard it. The sound of footsteps moving away. A vehicle door slammed shut, An engine roared to life. Seconds later, silence. The men were gone. Adrian was alone beneath the earth. The pressure around his body increased as the soil settled. His chest could barely rise. Every breath felt weaker than the last. He pulled desperately against the ropes, feeling them scrape his skin until his wrists burned. Nothing. The ropes refused to loosen. His fingers searched blindly through the darkness until they touched something unexpected. A small, jagged stone. Hope flickered inside him. Turning his body as much as the confined space allowed, Adrian began rubbing the ropes against the sharp edge. Back and forth. Again. Again. Every movement stole precious oxygen. Every second felt like an hour. The stone tore into his skin, but he refused to stop. Sweat mixed with blood. His muscles trembled from exhaustion. His lungs screamed for air. Then, one strand snapped. Adrian froze. He could hardly believe it. He pulled harder. Another strand broke. Then, another. Finally, the rope gave way. His hands were free. For the first time since the nightmare began, hope outweighed fear. Using every ounce of strength he had left, Adrian clawed at the packed earth above him. The packed earth refused to give way. Each handful collapsed back into the grave, burying him even deeper. Still, he refused to surrender. His fingernails cracked. His hands bled. His breathing became ragged. But he kept digging, because giving up meant dying. And Adrian Ashford had no intention of becoming the secret that buried an empire's corruption forever. Adrian Ashford refused to stop digging. His fingers clawed through the compacted earth above him, forcing aside handful after handful of damp soil. Every movement sent more dirt cascading back into the narrow grave, covering his face and filling his lungs with dust. He coughed violently. The little air that remained was disappearing. His arms felt heavier with every passing second. His muscles burned from exhaustion. Still, he kept digging. He wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. He was fighting for his next breath. The collapsing earth seemed determined to pull him deeper, collapsing each time he managed to create even the smallest opening. For the first time, he wondered if this was how it would end. Buried beneath tons of earth, forgotten by the world, his father's company stolen, his family's name destroyed, the truth buried alongside him. Adrian closed his eyes. Images of his parents filled his thoughts. He remembered Richard Ashford's words on his first day at the company. Character is revealed when no one is watching. Those words ignited something inside him. Failure was no longer an option. Summoning every ounce of strength left in his body, Adrian drove both hands upward with everything he had. The soil shifted. A faint stream of fresh air seeped through the loose soil. He inhaled deeply. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to keep fighting. Again he pushed. Again, the earth resisted. Then, with one final surge of determination, a section of the loose soil collapsed outward instead of inward. A faint beam of moonlight broke through the loose soil. It was weak, but it was real. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Adrian saw the night sky. He forced one arm through the opening, then another. His fingers dug desperately into the loose ground surrounding the grave as he pulled himself upward inch by inch. His body trembled under the weight of exhaustion. Every movement threatened to send him sliding back into the hole. His vision blurred. His strength was fading. One final pull, then another. At last, Adrian rolled onto the cold forest floor, gasping for air as though he had been underwater for hours. A light rain began to fall. He lay motionless, staring into the dark sky while each breath reminded him of one undeniable truth. They had failed. He was alive. But survival was only the beginning. The people who had buried him believed they had erased the only man capable of exposing their crimes. They had no idea he had escaped. And before the sun rose, Adrian Ashford made a silent promise. He would bring down every last one of them, even if it cost him everything. The first rays of dawn filtered through the trees as Adrian Ashford forced himself to stand. Every muscle in his body screamed in pain. His suit was torn. His hands were covered in dried blood. His face was streaked with mud, sweat, and exhaustion. Yet he was alive. He took one unsteady step, then another. Each breath burned his lungs after the hours he had spent buried beneath the earth. The dense forest stretched endlessly before him, silent except for the distant calls of birds welcoming a new morning. To everyone else, it was the beginning of another ordinary day. To Adrian, it was the beginning of a war. He knew better than to return home. The people who had buried him alive would almost certainly be watching his family, his office, and every place they expected him to seek help. If they discovered he had survived, they would finish what they had started. He needed to disappear. Using the rising sun to guide his direction, Adrian stumbled through the forest for what felt like hours. His vision blurred repeatedly. More than once, he collapsed to his knees before forcing himself back to his feet. Finally, he spotted a narrow gravel road cutting through the trees. Minutes later, an aging pickup truck approached in the distance. Adrian stepped into the road and raised a trembling hand. The driver slammed on the brakes. An elderly man climbed out, his expression shifting instantly from confusion to shock. Without asking questions, he helped Adrian into the passenger seat. The nearest rural medical clinic was nearly 30 miles away. The doctor who examined Adrian had spent decades treating accident victims, but even he struggled to believe what he was seeing. Bruised ribs, severe dehydration, cuts and abrasions across both hands, ligature marks around his wrists and ankles. When the doctor quietly asked what had happened, Adrian hesitated. If the wrong person learned he was alive, everything would be over. So he gave only one answer. "I had an accident." The doctor looked at him for a long moment. He knew there was far more to the story, but he respected Adrian's silence. After treating his injuries, he handed Adrian clean clothes and warned him to rest. Rest. It was the one thing Adrian could not afford. Before leaving the clinic, he purchased a prepaid mobile phone with cash from a nearby convenience store. Then he made a single call. Not to his father, not to the police. Only one person could be trusted: Lucas Bennett, his closest friend, the company's legal counsel, the man who had stood beside him through every battle. When Lucas answered, Adrian spoke with a trembling voice. "Lucas, I'm alive. They buried me alive." The line fell silent. Neither man realized that the battle for Ashford Global Holdings had just entered its most dangerous phase. Because while Adrian was preparing to fight back from the shadows, the people who had buried him alive were already celebrating his death. The world believed Adrian Ashford was dead. News outlets described his disappearance as a mystery. Across Ashford Global Holdings, employees gathered in silence, hoping for answers that never came. Inside the executive boardroom, however, the atmosphere was very different. Victoria Kane, Graham Pierce, and Marcus Holt believed their greatest threat had finally been eliminated. They believed they had won. They had no idea Adrian was watching from the shadows. Hidden inside a small cabin several miles outside the city, Adrian and Lucas Bennett spread stacks of documents across an old wooden table. Every file represented another piece of the conspiracy. Every financial record exposed another layer of corruption. Every fake contract brought them one step closer to the truth. But one problem remained. The original evidence had disappeared with Adrian's briefcase. Without it, proving the conspiracy in court would be almost impossible. Lucas searched through the company's archived financial reports, looking for anything the conspirators had overlooked. For hours, they compared transactions, traced account numbers, and followed the flow of money through dozens of shell companies. Then something caught Adrian's attention. One payment had been made twice. The first transfer had been hidden. The second had been approved by mistake. That single accounting error opened a trail the conspirators never realized they had left behind. Adrian followed the transactions one by one. Each transfer led to another company. Each company led to another account. By sunrise, the entire network had begun to take shape. The theft wasn't measured in millions. It was measured in billions. Money stolen over nearly a decade. Enough to destroy one of the country's largest corporations. Lucas leaned back in stunned silence. The conspiracy reached far beyond the executive board. Outside consultants, corporate lawyers, private contractors, even senior accountants had played a role in keeping the scheme alive. The deeper they investigated, the more dangerous the truth became. Then Adrian remembered something. Several weeks before his kidnapping, he had quietly uploaded encrypted copies of key financial records to a secure cloud server as a precaution. At the time, it had seemed like nothing more than good business practice. Now it could become the evidence that saved everything. If the files were still there, the conspirators had failed. If they had found the server first, the truth would disappear forever. Adrian opened the prepaid laptop Lucas had purchased that morning. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. One password, one chance. Everything depended on what happened next. He clicked. The loading symbol began to spin. Neither man spoke, because the next few seconds would determine whether they had enough evidence to destroy the empire of lies, or whether the people who buried Adrian alive had already erased every trace of their crimes. Richard Ashford hadn't slept since the night Adrian disappeared. Every hour that passed without answers felt heavier than the last. Search teams combed forests, highways, abandoned warehouses, and nearby towns. Private investigators followed every lead. Federal authorities questioned employees throughout Ashford Global Holdings. But Adrian Ashford had vanished without a trace. Deep down, Richard refused to believe his son was dead. Meanwhile, inside the executive boardroom, Victoria Kane appeared composed. She spoke confidently during every emergency meeting. She expressed sympathy for the Ashford family. She encouraged employees to remain united during the difficult time. Her performance was flawless. No one suspected she was hiding the darkest secret the company had ever known. Late that evening, Richard returned alone to his office. His desk remained exactly as Adrian had left it after their last meeting. The silence inside the room was unbearable. Then, his private phone rang. Only 3 people knew that number. Richard answered immediately. No one spoke. For several seconds, all he could hear was breathing. Then a familiar voice finally broke the silence. "Dad, I'm alive." Richard froze. His hands began to tremble. Tears filled his eyes. For the first time in days, hope replaced despair. Adrian spoke quickly. He explained everything. The kidnapping, the grave, the escape, the conspiracy inside Ashford Global Holdings. Richard listened without interrupting. Each sentence shattered another piece of the trust he had placed in his executives for years. When Adrian finished, only silence remained. Then Richard spoke with a calmness that surprised even himself. "They wanted to bury my son." His voice hardened. "Now we're going to expose every one of them." Father and son agreed on one thing. No one else could know Adrian was alive. Not yet. If the conspirators discovered the truth too soon, they would destroy every remaining piece of evidence. The next board meeting was only 2 days away. Richard intended to let his enemies believe they were still in complete control. They had no idea the trap they had built for Adrian was about to close around them instead. The morning of the board meeting arrived. Executives, shareholders, attorneys, and senior directors slowly filled the conference room at Ashford Global Holdings. Victoria Kane entered with complete confidence. Graham Pierce smiled as though the company's future had never looked brighter. Marcus Holt scanned the room, convinced every loose end had been eliminated. Richard Ashford walked in last. His expression revealed nothing. The meeting began like every other. Financial reports were presented. Expansion projects were discussed. Profits were celebrated. Then Richard slowly stood. The room fell silent. Without saying a word, Richard placed a thick folder in the center of the conference table. Inside were hundreds of pages of financial records, bank transfers, fake contracts, offshore account details, encrypted emails. Every document pointed to the same people sitting around the table. Confusion spread across the room. Victoria's confidence began to fade. Graham's hands started to shake. Marcus quietly reached for his phone. Before he could touch it, the conference room doors opened. Federal investigators entered alongside financial crime officers. No one moved. Every executive watched in disbelief as arrest warrants were read aloud. One by one, the conspirators realized their empire had collapsed. Victoria attempted one final denial. Richard looked directly at her and said, "You buried my son alive, and he survived." The room fell silent. Every face turned toward the entrance. The doors opened once more. Adrian Ashford walked into the boardroom. Bruises still marked his face. Small scars covered his hands. But his determination remained unbroken. The room erupted into shock. The executives who had buried him alive stared as though they had seen a ghost. For the first time since the conspiracy began, fear belonged to them. Everything they had stolen, everything they had hidden, everything they had sacrificed innocent lives to protect, collapsed in a single morning. They had buried a man, but they could never bury the truth. The arrest sent shockwaves across the business world. Within hours, every major news network was reporting the collapse of one of the largest corporate fraud schemes in the country's history. Ashford Global Holdings, once on the brink of destruction, had become the center of a nationwide investigation. Federal agents worked around the clock, uncovering years of hidden corruption. Shell companies were dismantled. Offshore accounts were frozen. Thousands of financial records and internal documents were recovered. One by one, every person connected to the conspiracy was questioned. Some confessed. Others tried to shift the blame. But the evidence Adrian and Lucas had gathered was impossible to deny. The truth spoke louder than any lie ever could. Days later, Richard Ashford stood before thousands of employees gathered inside the company's headquarters. The atmosphere was filled with uncertainty. Many feared the company would never recover. Richard stepped to the podium and looked across the crowd. For a long moment, he said nothing. A faint smile finally appeared on his face. "I have someone I want you all to see." A door at the back of the auditorium slowly opened. Adrian Ashford walked inside. The room fell silent. Then, almost instantly, the silence gave way to thunderous applause. Many employees wiped tears from their eyes. Some could hardly believe what they were seeing. The man they thought they had lost forever was standing before them, alive, stronger, and more determined than ever. Richard placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "This company was built on honesty, hard work, and trust," he said. "For a time, those values were buried beneath greed and betrayal. Today, we begin rebuilding not only this company, but the trust that made it great." The applause echoed throughout the building. In the months that followed, Ashford Global Holdings introduced sweeping reforms. Independent auditors were appointed. Financial controls were strengthened. Transparency became the company's highest priority. Employees who had once been afraid to speak out were encouraged to report wrongdoing without fear. The culture of silence came to an end. As for Adrian, he accepted a new responsibility. Not simply as the future chairman of the company, but as the guardian of the principles his father had spent a lifetime building. He knew the scars on his hands would never disappear. Neither would the memories of the night he was buried alive. But those scars no longer reminded him of fear. They reminded him of survival. They reminded him that truth is stronger than deception, that courage is stronger than corruption, and that even when evil believes it has buried justice forever, justice always finds a way back to the light. Because in the end, they buried Adrian Ashford alive, but they could never bury the truth. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were Adrian Ashford? If you enjoy powerful stories of courage, betrayal, and justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story.